What's up? What's up? Welcome to another episode of All Over Voiceover with Kip VH. I'm your host, Kip VH, and thank you for joining us. And I am thrilled to welcome to the studio Sara Jane Sherman. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad that we got this to work out.
Yeah.
And I think we met. I remember auditioning for you once, maybe last year, and I've known about, we've intersected here and there.
Absolutely.
But it's just great to be able to sit down and talk and that
yeah,
kind of stuff.
I know it was a quick audition, I think, at times, so it's good to actually be able to talk for once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's for someone who's involved in casting, so often it feels like the exchanges between actors and casting are either some kind of correspondence or through a third party or in passing in that context or a workshop. So it's just cool to get to, understand what your process is like and, that kind of stuff.
Yes, well, I appreciate you think that I have a process. That's very nice of you. I'm just kidding.
You have no process?
No process. No, I'm just kidding. I have a process. I'm just teasing.
Well, where are you from originally?
So I'm from the Baltimore area, just outside of Baltimore. Grew up there in a town called Columbia, Maryland, which is just halfway between Baltimore and D.C. And then I went to school in upstate New York at Syracuse. Then moved out here. It's like one of those graduated in May, moved out in June, couldn't wait.
Wow.
Tried to get my dad to let me leave school. It's fine. Let me just go to Hollywood. Let me get out there. But, he made me stay. Graduate.
He made you stay and finish.
He made me stay and finish school. Because I came out here and I had an internship in one summer. And, of course, I fell in love with it and was like, I want to stay. Dad, they said that I could work here and I could be a PA, And I was like, but he had me go back, which was the right thing to do. And finish
What was your field of study that you were
television, radio, and film.
Oh, really? Great.
Yeah. So I've always been a TV person and always knew this is what I wanted to do. I didn't know it was going to be casting, but I knew I wanted to be in television.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
I had a similar trajectory, and my senior year of college had an internship in Los Angeles and then had one more semester and had to go back and finish.
Yeah.
And it was that same feeling of to be young and in it and excited about participating in it.
Yeah. I got to read real scripts and give my feedback and coverage. And it was just I'm so bored. No. But, you're in it. It's energizing and electrifying, It's cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's the most fun. Awesome. So you go back, you graduate, and then you turn right back around?
Yep. And then I moved out here to Los Angeles. And I was very lucky because I came out at a time when there was a lot of jobs. So I got a job working for Stephen Bochco, who at the time was doing NYPD Blue, a show called City of Angels. And he was just a television god to me because I grew up watching Doogie Howser, and my parents were lawyers, so they watched LA Law. And I was a kid that always watched the credits. So I remember, Stephen Bochco's violin playing at the end of the each series, and I was just so into it. And so I was his corporate PA where I got the bagels. And no, I did other things too, but I would work there 9 to 6 or so, and then I'd leave right from there and go to the NYPD Blue set and hang out and just watch. And, that was just my passion. That's what I love to do. I was, on the Fox lot at the time, and it was just like, this is incredible. I'm in the action. I'm in it. And I would call home to my dad every day and tell him, stories of today, Stephen had a manicurist come in and do his nails, at his desk, It was just these stories of what Hollywood was. And it was just, everything was amazing. Everything was cool. And, it was a great first job.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, man. It just floods back all of that.
Yeah.
I was here, and I think I was 22, and in that window was I worked at a talent agency, the Artist Agency, and we represented Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
And they were shooting Cheers at the time, and they were like, "Oh, you want to go watch an episode or a rehearsal of Cheers?" And getting onto having your name at the gate to walk on at Paramount, and it was
the best. It was absolutely the best. And agency was the other route that a lot of my friends did too. They all came in. It's if you work in the mailroom, that's the way you start. That's what everybody does. And, it's incredible. It's fun.
So how long did you work for Stephen Bochco?
It was only 8 months or so. And then I went and became an assistant for someone else that I met through one of my old internships.
Okay.
And her name was, at the time, Meredith Metz, but now it's Meredith Roberts. And I went to work with her at a company called Ghislaine Entertainment that was known for doing Thomas the Tank Engine. And I was a development assistant where I was going to be a D girl. That's what they called them back in the day. And I don't even know what that means now. But, where I just got to be her assistant and work with her. And then she went on to go to Klasky Csupo, which Rugrats, Rocket Power is Told by Ginger, those types of shows that fed into Nickelodeon. And then she left and went to Disney. And I was very fortunate enough that she brought me over to Disney as well. And she's still there. She runs Disney Television Animation. And she brought me over as my first executive job as a development coordinator. So I was with her for 5 years and then got the first coordinator position over at Disney.
So as a coordinator, in development, like what are the tasks of that specific gig, like just to get a better insight into the layers of animation production?
So at the time, it was for animation, and I was taking pitches and reading scripts, finding writers, and finding new shows. And my pride, that I always say, my joy, was that I got to find and work on Phineas and Ferb in the very beginning.
Oh wow!
So that was something that was very near and dear to me. And I worked in development for about a year, and that was one of the shows that I got to develop. And at the time, it wasn't Disney XD; it was something called JetX. So we were developing for Disney Channel and JetX.
Okay.
And it was pretty interesting. It was just meeting a lot of writers and taking ideas and seeing what I thought would make great shows, or but from the junior perspective of that.
Yes, that's so awesome. What's your day-to-day like in that situation? I mean, like if you take a meeting with someone and they say, "Hey, I got a pitch for a great show," and you hear the pitch, you take it in, you give them notes, they write.
Yep, they come back with a treatment of sorts, or cater to your notes, and then it's my job then to sell it to the group to make sure the group is excited and then want to option the material. At the time, Phineas and Ferb, it was interesting because it had, two boys as a lead, but then also the Candace aspect of it. And it was really hard to tell, was this for a boy audience or a girl audience? So there was a lot of that back and forth. Is this right for JetX, or is this right for Disney Channel? Where would it live? But it was great working with those creators and helping to develop it. So it's a lot of reading, I would say, and giving feedback, and obviously being in meetings after meetings, or meeting after meeting, just as you learn about the other projects. And you have projects all in different stages. You're not just working on one. So something might be in a pilot stage where you're going down to the casting department, or, there's a music record going. So you're going and paying attention to that, finding the theme song, those types of things. Yeah. So putting it all together, or there's testing going on. So you're listening to what 5-year-olds have to say about the show, those kinds of things.
Oh, man. So yeah. Like I said, we hear, it's development, but like what all the layers and all the different parts of that to have a better understanding of where voice actors fit into that world, where prospective writers, all that other kind of stuff all fall within that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and then I spent a lot of time going down to the casting department, which just happened to be on the floor below, and would go down and really enjoyed that process. And they had an opening position there. So I talked to the person that was running it, which was Dave Wright, and I said, I'd love to apply for the coordinator position. And, lo and behold, I got that job. And then I spent 11 years there on his team, working my way up, coordinator, manager, director, executive director in the casting department. And I consider myself very lucky that I got to learn the world of animation casting at Disney. I don't think there's a better place I could have learned. And I had great teachers along the way where, like I said, I grew up always watching television and knowing actors. So I think I already had that base, but I didn't know voice actors, people who specifically who specifically focused in voice acting. And so it was great to learn all those new people and see what they could do and their talents, and learn how they could, get the vocal separation they needed. And it was a great learning on the job experience.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so great. What like in that process, like whether it's, I assume, like, as you talk about from entering that department all the way through the different levels of it, like how do your responsibilities modify? Are like you always part of a decision-making team, or like is casting done by committee or by one person, or What's that process like?
Well, I guess the answer is it depends.
Hmm.
But, when you first start out, a lot of it is scheduling and getting to know the actors.
Huh.
So one of the very first shows I worked on was Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, which I came in, I believe it was second or third season. So it was already a working machine. The main actors were cast, the Fab Five characters, and my job was basically scheduling them. Every once in a while, they would have Santa Claus be in an episode or whatever the case is, and then I'd be responsible for helping to cast that, presenting my ideas and what I found to the creatives, and see if they were interested in it, and then if they agreed, making the offer to the talent, and then booking the talent.
Gotcha.
As I was just getting started, Dave would help me with those deals, just as I was trying to feel my way through that process. Yeah. So there wasn't a ton of casting, and it was a great first show to work on.
Yeah, I imagine. It's just the amount of guest stars is... It's just those guys.
Yeah, and also those people could cover the incidental voices, and they could cover secondary and, other roles as they came in as needed. And then I worked on a show called Yin Yang Yo, which was interesting because it was out of Toronto. And I barely had any grasp on the voice actors in the U.S. And then it was like, let's cast in Toronto. I was like, I have no idea who's there. Okay. So then I had to learn that world as well. And what was interesting is we recorded that show once a month for a weekend where the creator would be in LA the whole time, but then would fly up for a Saturday and Sunday record 9 to 1, 2 to 6, Saturday, 9 to 1, 2 to 6, Sunday, and then come back home. So we'd get those 4 episodes all in one weekend.
Wow.
And that was such a versatile cast as well that I could just assign the roles. So while it was casting, it wasn't going out and finding necessarily new actors a ton.
Yeah.
So those were good shows to kind of get my feet wet in casting as I was starting to learn. But where you really learn is the audition process. When you do have a breakdown that you send out and you get these hundreds of auditions in, you really listen to what each actor can do. And then even more so, the callback phase, when people come in, you get to meet them face to face and see them and say, okay, they're fine. Okay, they can do this, they can do that, and start to put it together. So yeah, over 11 years, I learned a few things, I guess. Learned how to do it. And then by the end, you have the trust and the authority where you can, just do it on your own. And Dave was still there, but I got to be the second in command there, and really had full control over my shows, working with the executive producers on helping them to execute their visions.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
How when you get to a point where you really get a sense of what the talent pool is like in a specific market, in particular when it comes to who are heavy hitters and who are people who are incredibly versatile, like when you're putting together. How do I describe this? Like often, if I'm directing a show over at Second City, I go through the audition process and I start cherry picking my people together. I think like I'm building a team, right? So, what is that process like for you if you're assembling a show? Do you go to who are, to use my Avengers metaphor, I know I've got a handful of Tony Starks that I could plug in. One is going to be the guy I want to build around, or do you just audition everything, or what's your process for how you assemble a show? And I'm sure it depends.
Yeah,
but
it depends on what the creator's looking for and the type of show and the type of character it is. But I'm still learning, and there's new actors out there all the time, and the actors I know are learning new skills all the time. So while I can, if I'm in a bind and I have to cast something very quickly, yes, I can pull my 5 Tony Starks immediately and get them in there, and they'll knock it out of the park.
Sure.
But to keep myself relevant and to keep myself fresh, so that I'm not providing the same names that another casting director is, that another casting director is, what is making me special, what is making me stand out, maybe that I'm out there still finding new talent and still scouting and seeing who's available and finding the next Tony Stark and the next Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Well, apparently we have a lot of Tony Starks.
We have a lot of Tony Starks.
But right. I just think it's important. So I'll have an idea of who I want and hopefully request those people if they don't come in. But then let the agents also say, hey, well, have you heard this person? They're new, and we're excited about this person. Also doing my own scouting. I watch a lot of television, movies, going out to theater, to comedy shows, and to festivals or those types of things, showcases, seeing who's out there and seeing who else I can find.
Wow.
Because if it is the same 5 people all the time, they wouldn't need a casting director.
Yeah, right.
It's like, okay, we get it. You're going to pitch these 5 people. Understood.
Right. What's your Let's jump to auditions. When you receive an audition, like I hear people say all the time, make bold choices. What does bold choice mean to you?
Well, I mean, make a bold choice, but make the right choice, right? Give me what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But, I think when they say that, they mean stand out. So many times, because I do a lot of coaching as well on shows that are not my own, but other people doing auditions for other shows.
Yeah.
And they think a lot of times it's, oh, here's the voice of the character. I'm going to read 5 lines, all just in the voice of the character straight through. And it's like, yes, that is your job. That is what you're being tasked with. But you're also tasked with bringing this character to life and adding that physicality. And when I take my top selects and pass them on to the executive producer or executives, they have to hear this character come to life. And when I think making bold choices, I think of finding the range of the character within those sides. If you have 5 lines, I want to feel 5 different emotions. I'm a strong believer that auditioning is different than once you book the job.
Yeah.
So show me where the character could go, even though you only have these 5 lines. Assume that maybe it's not the whole episode. Maybe it's a whole series worth, and you're showing the arc of the character.
Yeah.
Because if the casting director doesn't like just the one voice you selected or the one era you put them in, or this character in, then that's all you have to show. But if you're showing excited and there's 2 lines or 2 sentences in one line for excited, maybe you're showing excited up here and then you show excited down here. You get to, I think that's a bold choice because it's not just, oh, I'm excited, loud, and happy throughout the whole way, but I'm showing more range of this character.
Yeah, yeah. The importance of levels and that revealing also your comic sensibility, your comic timing, all those kind of things.
Yeah, and really adding that physicality to it. Sometimes when I work with people, they're like, wow, you really break these down. But I think you can find so much more in a line if you really picture what is happening. And sometimes it's, well, I don't know. They don't say what's happening. It's like, okay, but make up something then. What is fully happening? Well, I'm a teacher. Great. But what are you doing? Well, I'm standing in front of a class. And then I say, great. What teacher do you know just stands there with their arms at the side talking to students with no movement whatsoever? Do you walk around? Do you talk to one particular student? Do you curse your job? Do you love your job? What are all those kinds of things that you could do all impact your voice? And I think that's part of making those bold choices is adding that physicality and those kinds of sounds that come naturally. Because if you're a technical person and you're creating this dynamic performance, I tell people, great, let's make sure you adjust the pitch, the pace, and the volume of your voice, finding those movements in there so it's not all one level. But if you're not a technical person, that's where the physicality could come in. Great. How does your voice change? By standing up in the middle of what you're saying or plopping down in the middle of what you're saying. How does all that impact your voice?
Oh, man. That's fantastic. It's a lot to take in and process.
I'm a talker. I'm sorry. Blah, blah, blah.
I love it. I really love it because, I've just been teaching an improv for VO class over at Second City. And the nature of our conversation has been, there's a lot of voiceover actors repeating these sort of myths or perceptions or ideas about, well, what casting wants. These sort of generic, sweeping statements about no one knows what they want. But it was like, to me, that I pointed to one of the actors and I was like, okay, well, what do you want in a spouse? And he was like, well, it's really hard for me to pinpoint. I was like, well, does that mean that you're wrong? Or does that mean that you're clueless? He says, no, I know it when I hear it. I know when I see her. I was like, well, okay, then that's how you need to approach the work in a way, right?
Yeah, and it's the same, people always say, oh, I heard the casting director only listens to the first line, so you got to make that first line amazing. Yeah. But it's not that we're listening for that first line to be amazing. We're just listening in those first couple seconds to know if you're the right voice for the role, So it's not necessarily like, you got to put so much weight on that first line. That first line is everything. But it's just because I've been doing it for so long, I can tell in the first 10 seconds, is this voice what they're looking for? Yes, let me keep listening. No, this is not in the ballpark. They're asking for a 13-year-old girl and you're a 40-year-old man. I can tell pretty quickly that's not going to work.
That's right.
So it's not necessarily that you weren't bold enough in that first choice, but you might not have been vocally what they were looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That's great. As you're describing, not only your coaching and your experience, but and you're playing through different types of, both energetically, there's also this sort of relaxed vibe. Is that something that you're looking for in reads as well? If it's called for, going back to Tony Stark, that's a pretty relaxed character versus, Red Skull is a less relaxed sort of a character. But is it like tonality? Like what other things are flag your ear to go, oh, this might not be right for this project, but this is someone I'm interested in hearing down the road on other things?
Yeah, I mean, a good performance is a good performance. If it's not right for this, great, let me flag it. And I'm casting numerous things, so it's not right for this show. Could be right for another show or another role.
Yeah.
Comedy. If I laugh, like that's great. And it's like, I forwarded oftentimes I do, here are the people that I think are in the range. Here are the people that made me laugh out loud.
Wow.
And I think it's worth sending because a lot of times they're like, you're right, they aren't right for this, but they're right for this other character we're doing, or they are super funny. Let's change the character for this person. Like those kinds of things happen all the time. So comedy does tend to be king in a lot of ways, assuming that it's a comedic piece.
Yes.
But I think that's really special when you can make somebody laugh that has heard the same lines 200 times, or has a new fresh take. It's like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. They're not just giving me what I want to hear, or trying to force themselves into the role. They're putting the role onto them and bringing what they have to the character.
That's great. That's such an important distinction too. Like that sense of, I'm going to wrestle this character so that you can see me kind of shine through. Like one of the things I wanted to ask you was about improvisation and like not how much improv to do in a thing, but like, when it comes to commercial auditions, I'm very comfortable making tweaks, changes to lines, but with animation and with video game, with dramatic and theatrical pieces, I'm way more reticent to do that. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, but hearing that makes me feel like, no, that's right. Like if you're going to make a strong emotional choice rather than rewrite the thing to make it funnier to your point of view.
Yeah. So it's funny because when I first started answering this question like years ago, I'd say, yes, definitely ad lib, always ad lib. And what ended up happening was I got a lot of not funny ad libs. So I've changed my stance on this. Making sure your ad libs genuinely plus the material. So making it, letting your personality come out. Sometimes I have people, they write something for every line. I say, great, leave 1/3 in, because what I hate, and I think what gets tough, is when the ad libs become formulaic and I become to expect them, which makes it not as funny. So they have a line, then add a little joke, then have the line, then add a little button, or whatever the case is. And it's like, yeah, okay, I guess what's going to happen on the third one, and then it's not as funny and not as exciting too. So just making sure your ad libs are genuinely funny if they're going to be comedic, but I don't consider sounds, laughs, breaths, gasps. I don't consider those ad libs. I consider them you bringing that character to life and adding that physicality. I guess I'm speaking specifically from the trying to, get a little joke in there.
Yeah.
One thing people also do with ad libs, which makes it hard, is when they stand out too much, like they leave too much of a pause in there because I can hear them thinking about the joke, where it's just a little bit like, no, say the line is, I can't even make up something on the spot. I want to go to the store. I want to go to that crazy store over, like where it feels like it's okay. Like you're like you said, wrenching that in to try to make a joke when you're just talking longer and not plussing that material.
Yeah. Oh man, that's so true. Like nothing is served in that aside from your own sense of doing something different, or like the standing out for the sake of standing out rather than standing out because you are invested and make a truthful choice.
Yeah. And then what ends up happening is, if I'm listening to, again, these 400 auditions, you're making my audition listening twice as long, or whatever the case is. And it's like, and it's not even helping you out.
Yeah.
So just making sure that your ad libs and stuff plus the material, you're judicious with them and really kind of ask yourself, is this funny?
Yeah.
And having the ability to be like, no, that wasn't my best one, or that was a good one. Because if it truly makes you laugh, I want to hear it, because again, I'm trying to match, this is kind of what you were touching on, the comedic sensibility of the actor as well as the writer and the executive producer, making sure they get each other's jokes and each other's brand of comedy. Yeah. So if what you are doing you think is genuinely funny, great. And then the executive producer laughs at it, even better. And then it's a match made in heaven. So yeah, if you think it's funny and it makes you laugh, then great.
But if you're thoughtful as an actor and get the joke of the copy, deliver the joke.
Yes.
Like make what's funny there funny.
Yes, because hopefully there is a joke somewhere in there.
What's your process? I'm jumping all over the place, but I'm fascinated by your process. What's your process with your sides selection? Is that how much of that is informed to you, or we really want to make sure that this is something that we hear as imagining a committee of people, or is it like, here's the pilot, please have them do something out of that?
So I try to have a say in the sides if I can, because I think there's a way to do them. I want to make sure out of 5 lines, we don't have the first 3 excited. It's like, great. So you said in your character description, this character is excitable, this character is flirtatious, this character is lovable, this character hates her brother, and whatever else. So I want to make sure there's a line where she's excitable, a line where she's flirtatious, a line where she hates her brother, just so that they can actually use what you're telling them in the character description to bring this character to life. Show me the sides of the character, truly. And it's not all one note. I try to make sure that there's not a shouting line right in the beginning a lot of times, because I can't always tell what the vocal quality is from the shouting lines in the beginning. So if there's going to be a yelling line, I try to make it a little bit further down. Yeah. I love when the first line is just the character being true to themselves naturally and being able to use their real voice. That's not like a sarcastic line where they're putting on a voice or putting on a character. I try to limit the sides. A lot of times I get lines that are like, here are 15 lines. It's like, okay, let's save that for maybe callbacks or whatever the case is. Let's get a sense of who's out there with these first 5 lines or whatever the case is. I also want to give the actor as much direction. So many times I get, well, we just want to see what the actor does with it. And it's like, okay, but you have to at least guide them a little bit to where you're trying to go. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of auditions that are not going to serve us in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sending this out again 2 weeks later. Yeah. So what information can I give them that still allows the actor to make choices and tells them, where to go with it or kind of what direction we're looking for, but they can add their personality and like I said, make some choices. And then on the flip side, I get sides that it's written out like whispered, faster, slow down here, where it's literally spelled out for the actor, which is hard too, because then it's hard to see the actor's interpretation of it. They're just doing what you're asking them to do exactly.
Yeah.
And are you going to do that for the scripts moving forward? And every script you're going to have, broken down that way? Right. Probably not. So then are we in trouble once we go to series if you're spelling it out like that?
Oh, man. Oh, that's great. That's really helpful to know, too, to like the first side being something that's like, let's hear kind of, like in my mind, it's like a character sheet of like a front shot of like Yogi Bear.
Yeah.
And then all the different sides of his, those old one sheets that they have on display over at Warner Bros. And stuff. And they use them everywhere. But like profile of surprise and all that other kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But letting that first bit sort of introduce the character to you in a way, if it makes sense in that moment.
Yep. A lot of the Disney sides we used to send out really were the first line from the pilot, pretty much explaining who the character was, like, hi, I'm so-and-so. And, it's usually those types of lines. And I always think these are a good introduction because it gives us a sense of what the actor is going to do just for the baseline of the character. Then we get a little crazy with certain emotions. But it's good to know just what everyday talking the character would sound like.
That's great. So someone punches through. They make your list of selects.
Right.
How many people do you generally call back for a callback?
Well, my process is, so depending on how specific the sides are, I can get anywhere between 200 to 400 auditions, say. Okay. I like to say if it's a rock in his 20s to 40s, I'll get the 400 auditions. If it's a 9-year-old Afro-Irish boy with a Southern accent, I'll get 4. It's one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Just depending on how specific the breakdown is.
Okay.
But when I get the auditions, I sift them through and do a yes, no, maybe file. So that's my process, my personal process. Because when I hear that first audition, I don't know if that's the best one I'm going to hear of the day or the worst one I'm going to hear of the day. So that's where I kind of do the yes, no, maybe. This is absolutely in no way like the character. Okay, this is interesting, as I'm doing that. And then after I do that, I go through and listen to my yeses and maybes to try to even it out.
Yeah.
So being that I'm freelance, every studio is different of what they want to hear. So some it's just, give me your top 10 takes, or even your top 5 takes of who you're liking, depending on our relationship and how I'm getting the trust level that's there and how I'm getting to know the creative team.
Yeah.
And I've had some shows where it's like, send us the all top 50, those kinds of things.
Wow.
Where I want to listen to everything, send me everything. Not because they don't trust me necessarily, but they just really want to dig in and hear what people have submitted.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I do consider myself the gatekeeper of those auditions. As a freelancer, I believe in total transparency, and I want to make sure I'm on the same page as my creatives. And I do think it takes a little bit of time for us to learn each other and each other's sensibilities and that subjective nature of, what makes a great read. So I'll say, here are my yeses, here's what I'm really liking, but here's what I had in maybes, and here's all the no's in case you want to eyeball it. Because every once in a while they'll come back and say, oh, this person I heard read and I didn't get to hear that. How come you didn't send that to me? So they can just look through, and sometimes they like to just take a quick listen to the no's. Okay, great. That's, exactly what I was thinking too. We're in sync here. Because I have to really swallow my ego in that is my job is just to fill the roles, and great if it's my idea and my suggestion, and I do my best to give the best suggestions. But if somebody walking in on the team says, what about this person? And, that's who gets the role. Fantastic. Yeah. It's really just all about getting that best voice, and you kind of, it's a team effort.
Yeah. What's been that process for you of going from being inside Disney for 11 years and then transitioning into a freelance casting experience?
Well, I think it was tough. So originally, about 2 years ago, and the reason I saw you at that time was that I had gotten approached by Jon Stewart's assistant saying he was doing a new project with HBO, and it was an adult political parody. Would I want to come be their head of casting? And it was a really tough decision for me. One, because I loved my time at Disney. I loved working there. I loved casting these Disney shows. My team was fantastic. My boss was fantastic. And it was a really tough decision. But at the time, I was the second in command, and this was my chance to get my own department and to get my feet wet in adult animation, which I hadn't done before. I'd only worked in kids. And getting to launch a department and start something from scratch. But I was scared, as with any leap, and, I didn't know what to do. So I talked to my boss at the time and said, so what should I do? And he's like, wait, so they're going to have you run your own department. You're going to get more money and learn new things. What do you think? And I was like,
right.
okay, I guess I see your point. So then I ended up leaving, and it was a, great experience. But what it really taught me quickly was, oh, I don't know how to cast a show. I know how to cast a Disney show.
Oh, wow.
Okay, what does that mean? And it was relearning, and why I went in to see you and some other people was relearning people from not a Disney perspective. I had sides that had swear words in them. It was like, wow, this is a big difference. Like, even hearing that, I was like, oh, that's really different.
Yeah.
But learning people not from what they were performing from a Disney aspect of it, but what they could do of parodies, because I never had to really do parodies too much at Disney, and sound-alike voices and things like that. And it was a very ambitious project that John had set out to do, and ultimately didn't end up working out for a series. And so that project got pulled, about 6 months into my tenure there. And so then I found myself like, oh my gosh, I'm in the freelance world. What do I do?
Yeah.
My job had been, someone else had taken over my job and got promoted into it. What am I going to do now? And really, it ended up being the kick in the pants I needed to start a freelance career for myself. And I did a 3-pronged approach where I was doing voice casting, voice directing, and then coaching. And first stop was any studio that did not have an in-house casting director. So I went to Warner Brothers. And reached out to them and said, hey, I'm available if you have any shows you need cast. And I was very fortunate that my first show was Looney Tunes cartoons that I got to cast there. And then I ended up getting Animaniacs there as well for casting and directing. And then Cartoon Network, I went over there because they also didn't have an in-house casting department, and made a connection with their shorts program. So I got to cast and direct their shorts that they have there. And that led to me getting a series there. And then Disney, they have the in-house casting team, but because of my relationships there, I was able to get some directing on a new show at the time, 101 Dalmatian Street, directing the U.S. talent. And then also I was in a unique perspective because I was so familiar with all the shows that I made a good substitute voice director for them. So so-and-so would go on vacation. Could I jump in and do it? And it was like, I was already familiar with the show. Yes, I could do it. So-and-so isn't able to do the promo or the game of this show. Can you come in and do it? Yes. Yeah. And they trusted me, and I would do hour here, hour there, to be able to do that. So, kind of piecing together, I guess, my business and,
That's such a fascinating, overview of this industry that you've been a part of, but then to be having a sense of, adapting to the sensibilities of all the different studios.
Yeah, and they all are very different and have very different processes and ways they like to do things and different budgets, which allow me to do different things at each studio. Some, what I learned was some of the studios don't even do callbacks. It's like, well, we're not going to, we're fine with the first choices. We don't need to bring people in and spend the money on callbacks. It's like, oh, wow. So then that translated to my coaching. Like, we got to nail it in these MP3s because some studios are casting right off the call, right off of the initial record. They're not, don't wait to kill it at the callback. Yeah. You got to knock it out of the park at the initial record. But as I was booking these jobs, the coaching kind of kept me going. And obviously I'm coaching on things that I have no affiliation or no contact with. Yeah. But just helping people. For some reason, my bread and butter tends to be people who are going in for Disney General auditions. I would help them prep because I, ran those for so long. So it's kind of being on the other side and helping them get ready for those types of auditions.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
How did you, I'm assuming, because you're talking also directing now, animation sessions and stuff like that. How did that process come about while you were at Disney? And I assume it happened while you were at Disney. Were you directing there as well?
I was doing auditions, like callback auditions and things like that, or filling in for people, but not a ton of directing. The directing more came when I started working with Jon Stewart, and we were doing these fast turnarounds, and I was directing actors via Skype while they were recording at home. Okay. And then it just kind of snowballed. In the freelance world, they really want you to be able to do both. Whether they hire you for both, that's one thing, but they want you to be able to do both. Yeah. To do the casting and directing because they get a nice package deal. Yeah. And it's probably the thing that makes me least comfortable in the beginning because casting I just get, and it's just like I get that it's not easy, but it's the easiest thing that I do. Yeah. And directing, I think so much more about that, and I'm so focused, and that takes me so much more time of prepping the scripts and getting ready. Just because I haven't done it for 20 years.
Yeah, sure.
But I do it.
It's this crazy process of leveling up in a career and then, planting your roots or shooting. That's the weirdest image, is like tentacles down into the dirt. I don't even know what that makes any sense at all. But just getting your bearings and adapting and then feeling comfortable in that space.
Yeah, well, there's so many talented freelance casting directors and voice directors out there. So what do I offer that's different from them? Or what's my specialty? What's my niche if I have one? Or am I adaptable and can do anything, work with any type of show? But since I hired a lot of those voice directors when I was the casting director side, I have a lot of good relationships with them. And we've even paired up together before. It's like, okay, I'm not able to direct this one, but maybe I'll cast it, you direct it, or whatever the case is. And, awesome. Everyone's been great in that sense and, so great to work with. And so that's been good.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
I love the variety that this career can give you. And and teaching has been a component, but interfacing with actors in that way of encouraging and advice as well, and all that kind of stuff. It's interesting how that, I don't know if that's been your experience too, but coaching folks and doing that, it gives you stuff in a different way. Yeah. What led you into that space as well?
Well, I think it just is something I've always done classes, but I hadn't done as much individual coaching. And the power of the internet was crazy, right? I just kind of created a website and popped it up there, and without even doing any marketing or advertising, people would find me, and especially maybe because I offered online stuff too, a lot of Skype stuff that people all over the U.S. or the world even can find me and get that coaching. Yeah. But I love when I coach someone and they book the role, and that's really exciting. And because I know that there are hundreds of auditions, and it's like, oh, I got the call back. Great. That's a feat in of itself. Yeah. Okay, great. Now you actually booked the role. That's amazing. but I mean, I think that it's great, but what I think is interesting is that I know I can't take the full credit on that because it is these actors. It's like, yes, I can give them the tools that they need, but it's like these actors going in and killing it. Yeah. But what extra edge can I give them from my listening to hundreds upon thousands of auditions of what I would want to hear?
Yeah.
Especially because right now I found myself doing a lot of sound-alikes and parody casting, which I don't even know how that happened, but now I'm doing that. On a lot of the shows that I work on. And it's little tips. Okay, great. You sound like that character, but every once in a while I hear this character coming through. And if they start thinking about that character, they're not going to consider you for this. So I'd rather you sound less like the character than sound more like somebody or something else well-known or whatever the case is. So little tips that I can give. I love doing it if I can. It's exciting.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. What general, this is general. General, like what's kind of your stock advice? Like if you're at a convention and someone is like, what advice do you have for actors? That's the most generic question I may have ever asked.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be surprised about how many, actually you probably wouldn't be surprised because you're a teacher too, but it's, I have a funny voice. I should be in cartoons and those types of things. I get that all the time. Yeah. People who have no acting training at all, wanting to do it. And I've tried to stop using voiceover and tried to, just use voice acting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I get, it's I want to be in voiceovers. And it's like, okay, great. Well, it's like voice acting. And my next question is, great. Like, what acting training have you done? Have you studied? No, nothing. And it really is these people who just have no background at all and, just really have no idea that they need to be good actors for it.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe they've always come up with great characters, and I think that's fantastic, but you got to back it up with the acting. And then I refer them to comedy classes as well. But I think that's kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
And again, picturing the scene and really bringing themselves into the character, and it's more than the words on the page. Because again, if 399 other people are reading the words on the page, why am I going to pick you? Why are you someone that is going to be put in that yes folder?
Yeah.
But yeah, it really comes down to the acting.
It's so true. It's I don't know. It's crazy to me that that isn't put together. But I know that so many classes that I've taught, the people who have come in, their main goal is to get into animation specifically too. I want to do VO, but I specifically want to do cartoons. Yeah. And that is at its heart is the most important thing is that you can be doing is training your acting chops so that you can make informed choices.
What I think is also interesting that people don't realize, and this is not to dissuade anyone, but it's your audition is going to be next to the best of the best of the best. It's not here's the special section for people that are just getting started in auditions. Yeah. You're going to be reading against your heroes, the reason you got into this business in the first place. So you got to bring it, where it's you do have to be at the top of your game. And yes, we're looking for different voices and different sounds, but don't think that, the top 5 females and top 5 males voice actors of all time are not going to be right in that mix with you reading
for a series lead on something.
Yes. Yeah. And it's going to be the very next one I listen to. If I hear yours, then I'm going to hear theirs.
Right.
And will I notice a difference? And it is that acting that is going to have to, be stepped up. And what do you bring that makes you special and what makes you unique? Sometimes I ask people that and they're just kind of I don't know nothing. It's well, if you hate your audition and if you hate what you're doing, should I like it? Or do you need me to tell you, no, you're great. You're great.
Right. Why would you send something that you go, ugh, there it's done?
Yeah.
If you have that intention when you're sending something out,
yeah,
you're asking your agent to stand behind that. You're asking a casting director to stand behind that.
Yeah, you're putting everybody's reputation on the line with it, right? Your own when you send it in because you're proud of it. Your agents because then they're representing you. Then if I passed it along, then it's a reflection of me.
Right.
Things like that, yeah.
Oh, man. Dude, this has been completely fascinating, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming in and talking about all this stuff. If people want to study with you or follow you on social, are you active on social media? Do you do stuff on?
Yes, I would say Yes. Convincingly. I mean, I own them. I own a Twitter account, an Instagram account. No. Probably the easiest way is my website, which is the www.sarajanesherman.com.
Uh-huh.
And then my Twitter is @SarahJaneSherman. Instagram is @Sara.Sherman. So pretty much my name if you Google me. I'm around.
That's awesome. And what's, just out of curiosity as we wrap up, like what's something that you've seen or heard or listened to lately that's either movie, podcast, whatever, something that's inspired you in one way or another?
There's a podcast that I really like called My Favorite Murder.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's really great. These two women talking about murder, and it's, which is a very gruesome thing, but they're also bringing some the stories behind it and really great storytelling and bringing these characters to life, and also just chatting with them and how they weave everything in such a topic that would be like, well, why would you want to listen to a whole podcast on that? But they're comedians and they bring these such a, I don't want to say levity to it because I mean murder is very serious and stuff, yes. But like the way they talk about it is just so, you just want to keep listening to it, and I like that. I like.
Are they just telling stories? Are they acting stuff out? Is it a dramatic thing?
No, they're telling about murder cases that happened and telling stories of it. And they do this whole piece of hometown murders where people write in things that happened in their town, and and it's like they react to it, and it's just so emotional, but it's great, and it's, I don't know, a lot of really cool stuff. But I recommend that. My Favorite Murder. My Favorite Murder. Yeah.
I've been obsessed with Revisionist History by Malcolm Gladwell. That's been the podcast I've just been driving around town listening to. He just wrapped up.
Well, you've got the commute, so you've got.
I got the commute, so it's always like that. This American Life, and then there's this movie podcast. This movie. 3-4 movie reviewers from Chicago reviewing current films, but then comparing them to older films. So like they did, I haven't seen this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood yet because my wife had a massive allergic reaction on the way to the movie theater.
Oh no!
But found out she's allergic to chicken. So
like a new allergy, or she'd never had chicken before, and then all of a sudden,
dude, I
okay, sorry.
It's okay. It's all right. Like she had anaphylactic reaction in the car to chicken. She's had chicken her whole life. No problem. But like with menopause hit, and it's like all of a sudden she's allergic to onions, garlic, soy, dairy, peanuts, like all these things. Wow. So like no processed food. And we bought tickets to the movie. Our daughter was at a birthday party.
Yeah.
And we're driving, and all of a sudden she's like, she could feel her, like the first symptoms of her throat closing up, and took 2 EpiPens. We still had to call the fire department to come.
Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that.
I didn't mean to take it so dark. She's fine. She's great right now. But
you saved me from my Favorite Murder reference. So thank you for taking it one step further.
Fortunately, but now we know.
Yeah.
And like that's a gift of like knowing that. But it's been the past 3 years have been like this discovery of her allergies, and it's been. Wow. Fortunately, she's a great cook and is comfortable in the kitchen, and now like makes everything herself. But anyway,
oof.
Yeah, it was a trip. So that's our Once Upon a Time in Hollywood story. So once I see the movie, I'll be able to compare it to what he was talking about. Anyway, blah blah blah. I made it weird.
No, not.
But it's been crazy. But that's all good. But I can't again. Thank you so much for coming in and for talking with me and our listeners. And yes, and thank you for tuning in. And we'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Bye, guys.
This has been All Over Voiceover with Kif VH. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please go to iTunes and give us a positive rating. It truly helps. Follow me on Twitter @KifVH or on Instagram @KifVH or on Vero @KifVH. Thanks so much for listening. Talk to you soon. Claim victory and depart the field.
Werewolf?
There.